It's 1986, a quiet test track in Dearborn. No cameras, no press, just a mid-sized sedan idling under gray skies, and a group of engineers watching it like their careers depend on it, because they do. Under the hood sits something that, on paper, looks painfully ordinary, a 3.0-liter V6, cast iron, 2 valves per cylinder, no turbo, no exotic materials, nothing flashy, but what almost nobody knows is this engine wasn't built to impress, it was built to survive. And what happened next changed everything. Most people look at Ford's Vulcan V6 and think it was boring, underpowered, a placeholder, something you'd find in a rental car or your uncle's old Taurus. But that's not the real story. The real story is about how this engine quietly became one of the toughest, most brutally reliable power plants Ford ever made, while hiding a series of design compromises, engineering shortcuts, and unexpected strengths that even Ford didn't fully anticipate. So how did a nothing special engine end up becoming a legend in disguise? To understand that, you have to go back to the mid-1980s. Ford had a problem. Actually, multiple problems. Fuel prices had spiked in the late 70s. Regulations were tightening. The era of massive V8s was collapsing under emissions laws and fuel economy standards. The old ways weren't just outdated, they were dangerous for business. And here's what made it worse. Japanese manufacturers were flooding the American market with efficient, reliable cars that made Detroit look slow and outdated. Honda, Toyota, Nissan, they were eating Ford's lunch. Their engines ran cleaner, lasted longer, used less fuel, and American buyers were noticing. Ford's market share was bleeding. Their reputation for quality was in question, and the pressure from upper management was intense. Something had to change. Ford needed something new, something efficient, something affordable to build at scale, and most importantly, something reliable. Because by the early 80s, Ford's reputation had taken hits. Customers were tired of engines that felt outdated, inefficient, or prone to issues. They'd dealt with the Pinto disaster. They'd seen recalls. They'd experienced frustration. Trust was eroding. And in the automotive business, once trust is gone, it's almost impossible to get back. So the mission was clear. Build a modern V6. Keep it simple. Keep it cheap. Make it last. That's where the Vulcan project began. At its core, the 3.0 Vulcan V6 was almost aggressively straightforward. A 60-degree V6 layout, cast iron block, cast iron heads, a single camshaft buried deep in the block, push rods, rocker arms, old-school architecture in a new era. The bore measured 3.50 inches. The stroke came in at 3.14 inches. That gave it a total displacement of 2,986 cubic centimeters, just shy of 3.0 liters. Compression ratio? Around 9.0.1 in early versions. Horsepower? A modest 140 HP when it debuted in the Ford Taurus. Torque? About 160 lb-ft, not exactly headline-grabbing numbers. But here's where it gets interesting. That undersquare to near square design, combined with conservative tuning, meant the engine wasn't stressed at all. It wasn't pushing limits, it was playing the long game, and Ford engineers knew it. One engineer reportedly joked during development, "If this thing fails, it won't be because we asked too much of it." But there was a reason for that mindset, because the alternative was a nightmare. See, at the same time Ford was developing the Vulcan, they were also working on more advanced engines. Overhead cam designs, aluminum components, higher revving architectures, engines that looked great on paper, engines that promised more power, better efficiency, lighter weight. But those engines came with risk, more moving parts, tighter tolerances, higher costs. And in the mid-1980s, reliability still mattered more than innovation for Ford's core customers. The average buyer wasn't shopping for a sports car. They wanted something that started every morning, something that didn't leave them stranded, something that didn't require constant trips to the mechanic. So the Vulcan became the safe bet, the conservative choice, the engine that wouldn't win awards but wouldn't break hearts either. But safe doesn't always mean simple, because once testing began, problems started to show up. Not catastrophic failures, not dramatic explosions, something more subtle: heat. Under sustained load, the Vulcan's cooling system struggled to keep temperatures perfectly balanced. The cast iron construction held heat longer than expected, and in early test cycles, hot spots began forming around the rear cylinders. Engineers ran the engine for hours on dynamometers, simulating highway driving, mountain passes, towing conditions, and those rear cylinders kept running hotter than the front. Not enough to destroy the engine immediately, but enough to raise concern, because heat leads to wear leads to failure, and failure was not an option. So Ford engineers made adjustments. They refined coolant passages, improved flow distribution through the block, adjusted timing and fuel delivery to reduce thermal stress under load. They ran simulations, tested prototypes, monitored temperature differentials across the cylinder banks. It wasn't a radical redesign. It was careful, incremental improvement, the kind of work that doesn't make headlines but makes engines last. And it worked. Thermal balance improved. Hot spots diminished. The engine started behaving more predictably under stress. But then another issue surfaced: oil delivery. At higher RPM, around 5,000 and above, the oiling system showed signs of pressure drop. Not dramatic, but noticeable enough that bearings began to show premature wear during stress testing. One technician reportedly described it bluntly: you could see the beginning of trouble before it actually failed. That's a dangerous place to be, because it means the engine isn't breaking yet, but it will. And once engines are in customer hands, scattered across the country, failure becomes expensive. Recalls, warranty claims, bad press. So again, Ford adjusted. They refined oil passage routing, improved pump efficiency, ensured more consistent flow to critical components like the crankshaft and connecting rods. They tested different oil weights, different operating temperatures, different load conditions. And here's the key detail: instead of pushing the engine harder, they limited it. Redline stayed conservative. Power output stayed modest. The Vulcan would never be a high-revving screamer. It would never compete with sports car engines, because the goal wasn't speed, it was durability. And that decision would define the Vulcan's entire life. By 1986, the engine was ready for production. It debuted in the Ford Taurus and Mercury Sable, two cars that would go on to redefine Ford's presence in the mid-size market. The Taurus itself was a gamble, a radical departure from Ford's boxy, conservative designs. Aerodynamic, modern, bold. And underneath that revolutionary body sat the utterly conventional Vulcan V6. It was a strange pairing, a futuristic car powered by an engine that looked backward. But Ford knew what they were doing. The Taurus had to work. It had to be reliable. It couldn't afford to strand families on road trips or leave commuters helpless in parking lots. So they paired innovation with dependability, and almost immediately, the Vulcan started proving itself. Not in headlines, not in racing, but in something far more important: real-world miles. Taxi fleets began adopting the Taurus in large numbers. Police departments tested them. Rental companies ordered them by the thousands. And that's where the Vulcan faced its ultimate test: stop-and-go traffic, long idle times, constant heat cycles, minimal maintenance, drivers who didn't care about oil change intervals, mechanics who used whatever parts were cheapest, conditions that destroy weak engines. And yet, the Vulcan kept going. 100,000 miles, 150,000 miles, 200,000 miles. Some fleet vehicles pushed past 300,000 with nothing more than routine maintenance. With basic oil changes, coolant flushes, and occasional belt replacements, many of these engines just refused to die. Mechanics started noticing something unusual. When they finally tore down high-mileage Vulcans for inspection, they found something surprising. Internal wear was minimal. Cylinder walls held up. The crosshatch pattern still visible even after years of service. Crankshafts stayed intact. Bearings showed wear, sure, but not the catastrophic degradation you'd expect. Valve trains remained functional, pushrods straight, rocker arms solid. Even after years of abuse, tear-down inspections showed engines that looked surprisingly healthy. One fleet mechanic reportedly said, "We kept waiting for them to fail. They just didn't." And word started spreading, not through advertising campaigns or marketing materials, through mechanics, fleet managers, used car buyers, the people who actually lived with these engines every day. The Vulcan became known as the engine you didn't have to think about. Boring? Sure. Reliable? Absolutely. But here's the twist. That durability came at a cost. Performance. Because while the Vulcan was reliable, it wasn't exciting. Acceleration was adequate, not thrilling, not disappointing, just adequate. Highway merging required planning. Passing on two-lane roads took patience. It would get you there, just not quickly. Compared to competitors, and even Ford's own later engines, it felt underpowered. By the early 1990s, updated versions pushed output slightly higher, around 145 to 155 horsepower. Torque climbed to roughly 170 lb-ft. Ford tweaked fuel injection systems, refined intake designs, improved exhaust flow, but these were small gains. Incremental improvements. The fundamental architecture never changed, and by then, the automotive world was changing fast. Overhead cam engines were becoming the standard. Multi-valve designs were producing more power with better efficiency. Variable valve timing appeared. Aluminum blocks became common. Engine management systems grew more sophisticated. Ford itself introduced the 3.0 Duratec V6, a completely different animal. Aluminum block, dual overhead cams, 24 valves, around 200 horsepower, higher revving, smoother, more modern, everything the Vulcan wasn't. And suddenly, the Vulcan looked outdated, ancient even. So why didn't Ford kill it immediately? Because customers didn't care. They trusted it. And trust is hard to replace. Fleet operators, daily drivers, budget buyers, they all knew what the Vulcan offered. Consistency, predictability, longevity, and in many cases, that mattered more than horsepower numbers. A taxi company doesn't care if the engine sounds good. They care if it runs 500,000 miles without major repairs. A budget buyer doesn't need thrilling acceleration. They need something that starts every morning for the next 10 years. The Vulcan delivered on those promises, but the gap kept growing. Fuel economy standards tightened again. Emissions regulations became stricter, and the Vulcan's old-school design started becoming a liability. Its cast iron construction made it heavy. Its pushrod design limited efficiency gains. Its two-valve architecture couldn't compete with newer multi-valve systems. It wasn't just about power anymore, it was about efficiency. And the Vulcan wasn't built for that future. Still, Ford kept refining it. Minor updates, improved fuel injection systems, better emissions control. They kept it compliant, kept it relevant, kept it available. But the core architecture never changed. It couldn't, because changing it would mean redesigning the very thing that made it reliable. And that's the paradox. The same simplicity that made the Vulcan bulletproof also made it obsolete. By the early 2000s, the writing was on the wall. Production numbers remained high, but newer engines were taking over. The Duratec became the preferred option in most applications. The Vulcan was slowly phased out of major platforms. First the Taurus, then the Sable. Eventually, even the Ranger moved on. And finally, in 2008, after more than 2 decades of production, it was gone. No dramatic farewell, no celebration, no commemorative edition, just silence. The assembly line stopped. The tooling was retired. The era ended. But here's the part most people miss. The Vulcan didn't fail. It didn't collapse under its own flaws. It didn't get recalled into oblivion. It simply outlived its purpose. Over its lifetime, millions of units were produced, installed in vehicles like the Ford Taurus, Ranger, Tempo, and Aerostar. It powered family sedans and work trucks, commuter cars and commercial vans. And across those millions of engines, a pattern emerged. They didn't make headlines, they made it to work. They didn't dominate racetracks, they dominated reliability charts. They didn't win awards, they won over skeptics. And in a world obsessed with performance, that kind of consistency is rare. So what's the shocking truth behind Ford's 3.0 Vulcan V6? It wasn't designed to be great. It was designed to be enough. Enough power, enough efficiency, enough durability, and by refusing to chase extremes, it accidentally became one of the most dependable engines Ford ever built. But it also showed the limits of that philosophy, because eventually, enough isn't enough anymore. The industry moved forward, technology evolved, customer expectations changed, and the Vulcan stayed exactly where it started: simple, strong, and quietly left behind. In the end, the Vulcan V6 didn't win races or set records, but it did something arguably harder. It earned trust mile after mile, year after year, with almost nothing to prove. Its strength came from restraint, not ambition. If you enjoyed this deep dive, let me know what you want next. Another overlooked engine, a legendary rivalry, or a forgotten failure that changed everything. And if you're into stories like this, make sure to subscribe, because there's always another engine hiding a story you've never heard.